Satyoham, Satyoham, Satyasvarupoham. Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivasvarupoham. Sundaroham, Sundaroham, Sundarasvarupoham. Shambhoham, Shambhoham, Shambhosvarupoham. Rudroham, Rudroham, Rudrasvarupoham. Aum Namah Parvati Pataye, Har Har Mahadev. Shambho Shankar Uma Maheshwar Gauri Priya Sadashiva. Shambho Shankar Uma Maheshwar Gauri Priya Sadashiva. Gangadaram Rishikeshwaram Aumkaram Vaheguru. Shambho Shankar Uma Maheshwar Gauri Priya Sadashiva. Nrityoham, Nrityoham, Nrityasvarupoham. Chittoham, Chittoham, Chittasvarupoham. Ambaroham, Ambaroham, Ambarasvarupoham. Chidambara natarājā, Chidambara natarājā, Tillai வாழ் Chidambara natarājā. Namo, 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 Namo. Shambho Shankara Uma Maheshwar Gauri Priya Sadashiva. Aum Namah Shivaya. Aum Namo Bhagavate Rudraya. Aum Namah Parvati Pataye. Har Har Mahadev. āDikkoNDār. அந்த வேடிக்கைக்கான கண் ஆயிரம் வேண்டாமோ. āDikkoNDār. அந்த வேடிக்கைக்கான கண் ஆயிரம் வேண்டாமோ. Yes, this is the opening line, rather a query of VasanthiMā's song today, composed by Sri muttutāNDavar, foremost amongst the Trinity or movers and shakers. No, that's not the English mover, but the Tamil mover, meaning the Trinity, three. So he is the foremost, in fact, 2 centuries earlier than the other two, of the Tamil Carnatic Isayalars or Vagiyakaras. So it's in our mother tongue, VasanthiMā's and mine, which also happens to be what I refer to usually as the universal father tongue, namely Tamil. Wow! The emperor of dance is center stage. Chidambaram natarājā, Chidambaram natarājā, Shambho Shankara, Shambho Shankara, Uma Maheshwara, Gauri Priya Sadashiva. This emperor of dance, natarājā, Sarvabhauma, Chakravarti, Bharatanaट्य Shiromani is center stage today. Yes. Move over Mikhail Baryshnikov, Michael Jackson, Prabhudeva, Hrithik Roshan, Tiger Shroff, Joseph Vijay, Chandrasekhar, Allu Arjun et al. The dance of our own nothingness and its metaphysics is indeed inimitable. So move over even my favorite upcoming Olympic events of synchronized swimming and rhythmic gymnastics. For this is way beyond all that the Tokyo Games can wait. This happens every moment, has been happening every moment, and will continue to happen every moment. The dance of Shiva, our own nothingness. What a spectacular Natya Nritya performance. Natya Nritya. It's a subtle difference between the two, but it's a combo which the cosmic dance of Shiva is. What a spectacular Natya Nritya performance, and aptly matching Samagana Veda Ghosha. Samagana or Samaveda, one of the four Vedas, is the source of all music, including Carnatic and Hindustani music, the very Saptaswaras. So, it's not just the Natya and Nritya performance of Natarājā, but the aptly matching Samagana Veda Ghosha emanating from none other than his own Damru, the source of all creation. Yes. Look at his four hands. On the right upper hand, he holds the Damru, with which the sound of Akara, Ukara, Makara, Aumkara is created, which is the source of all creation. And in this hand, the right top hand, he is showing the Abhaya Mudra, saying, you don't need to worry. So creation is taken care here. What is usually ascribed to Brahma. Preservation, maintenance and sustenance is taken care here. What is usually assigned to our own everythingness, Vishnu. Our own creativity is taken care. Our own sustainability is taken care. What next? Destruction, demolition and dissolution. You would see the fire over here in the top left hand for absolute dissolution into pralaya. Laya, pralaya. We'll talk about laya a little later, but pralaya is a special laya, and that's done by our own nothingness too. Not someone sitting somewhere far there in so-called Kailasha, but right here, up here in the Sahasrara of me, you and everyone else, including VasanthiMā there. So, the Natya and Nritya should aptly match the Samagana Veda Ghosha, which is what the source of creation is. And if you look at it, I left out one hand out of the four. The creation is taken care, preservation is taken care, and the dissolution is taken care. What else would you need? You think these are the only three things? Well, that's if dharma, artha, kama are the only goals of your life. But a true human life has the ultimate goal of moksha, nirvana, mukti, liberation from this cycle of creation represented by the Dhamru, preservation represented by the Abhaya Mudra, and the dissolution represented by the fire. You ought to get out of this cycle, vicious cycle. And that's what the fourth hand, the front left hand, indicates. It points to the raised left leg, which indicates Sharanagati, or complete dissolution, not in the sense of a material dissolution that this fire points out, but the dissolution of the very vicious cycle of birth, life and death. To get over that, the only source of mukti or moksha is our own nothingness right here. Meditate, meditate, meditate. through this highest knowledge, jnana and vijnana, that we are going to share today through this song as well as the Advaitic interpretation of it as always. And what about the circle out here? That is the boundaries that you are extending. What are the boundaries that you are extending? Boundaries, by definition, whether it is boundary condition or boundary value problem, is only with physics, that which is physical, that which is made out of materials. So the infinite radii circle that he's showing over here is the expansion of that boundaries from physics to metaphysics. Aldous Huxley and many other great scientists and science fiction writers of not only India but all over the world have raved about the comprehensive symbolism that this holds, because what is contained within this ring and fire all around is the fire represents the energy and the ring represents the boundaries of the physical, which basically means you are getting out of matter and space-time as well as energy. The interplay of matter, energy and space-time is what you are contained by if you have a finite radius circle. But as you expand this balloon and make it burst and have an infinite circle, infinite diameter, means your center, my center, VasanthiMā center, everyone's center can be different, but still all of us belong to the same circle of infinite radius. Centers can also become infinite in number, whereas a finite radii circle can have only one center. An infinite radii circle where the boundaries do not exist can have infinite number of centers, which is you, me and everyone else, not only humans but all of life. And that's basically what it's expanding and showcasing. Left out one last thing, of course, amongst the limbs. We talked about the 4 hands and 1 leg, but the other leg is over a dwarf. And who's that dwarf but our own false identity? We have to sublimate that false identity in order to rise above and be able to get into a spiritual path. And that's what you suppress. No. If you suppress something like that, it's like a spring, it's going to bounce back with even more force. You got to keep it under observation below your feet. Keep it where it's necessary, because once in a while you need that too. You bring it out and take it back. A lot of people say, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect, I'm the radiant Atman. The last statement is correct, but the first 3, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect, is not fully true. They are, in fact, to be stated as, I'm not only the body, because I go beyond my annamaya kosha. I'm not only the mind, because I go beyond the manomaya kosha. I'm not only the intellect, because I go beyond the vijnanamaya kosha. I'm not only the breath, because I go beyond even my pranamaya kosha. Each balloon that I'm mentioning is in an ascending bigger size. And then you say, I'm basically the Sat Chit Ananda, the Anandamaya Kosha of infinite radius. You see, everything is in circles, be it the shape of the planets, the shape of the stars, the shape of the black holes, they all tend to get into an ellipsoid shape, and eventually the special case of a circular shape. So that's the speciality of this circle of fire around him of an infinite radius. So there's far more to it, but let's keep it for another day, because there's so many songs on Natarājā, and I hope VasanthiMā can sing some of the other ones too in the future as we go along. So this Natya or Nritya and the Samagana Veda Ghosha, which is matching, on which the Carnatic music is based, befitting the Advaitic principles that it depicts, freezing space-time to a standstill, and the audience, yes, you listeners, you viewers, and all of us who witness every moment the dance of Natarājā, not only through VasanthiMā's song, but every experience of life. And what are we doing here? Freezing space-time through this dance of Natarājā to a standstill, and the audience into a bewitching silence. Yes, the importance of Mauna, which ironically speaks volumes. Yes, silence speaks volumes. The nuances of every step and the vigorous oscillations of every strand of hair of the Jata-jhutadhari. You see the hairs over here spreading all the way to infinity, emanating from the scalp, which contains the intellect, which cognizes and recognizes, what we call as recognize, this all of that which exists, the entire universality. So every stand of this Jata-jhutadhari are captured by the poet very intricately. More about the poet himself later. Not only does the poet capture it very intricately, but very educatively too. With high speed, nay, photo speed. Not photo in this sense, is the speed of light, relativistic. So how does he capture? Very intricately and very educatively. With what? With high speed, nay, photo speed, cinematography. Not merely for a live telecast or a YouTube video, but to cast a spell forever over all lives, including those yet to germinate. This song's profound opening query, āDikkoNDār and the Vedikkai Kāna Kann Āyiram Vendāmo, is often unfortunately watered down by literal translations, like he is dancing, āDikkoNDār. To see that dance and the Vedikkai Kāna, don't we require 1,000 eyes? Kann Āyiram Vendāmo. Yes, that meaning has some significance, but there's far more that we lose out on if we stop with that. In particular, I need to bring up these two words. He's not just saying āDinar, but āDikkoNDār. What is the difference? āDinar means you typically dance for entertaining others. It's not the case here. āDikkoNDār, out of his own bliss, out of his own ecstasy, as an expression of that infinite bliss and ecstasy, he's expressing it out in the form of dance. And who is he? Not somebody somewhere there, but somewhere here and now. Yes, our own nothingness, expresses its ecstasy and its bliss. That is why we say āDikkoNDār. Does it mean it doesn't entertain anybody? Well, of course it does, but that's a collateral benefit. That is not the purpose, that is not the motivation, that's not the goal. Same way, whatever we do, it has to be out of our own joyous expression. Automatically it will serve the society. But if you're doing something out of compulsion, as in an accidental way because you're being forced by somebody else, as if it's somebody else's rules which are imposed upon you, then no, you will not be able to unravel the immense potential that you have. Apart from this word kondar in āDikkoNDār, instead of Adinar, we are saying āDikkoNDār because it's a dance which is coming out of one's own bliss rather than a motivation or a goal or an objective to entertain someone else or to serve someone else. All of that, yes, it happens, but as a collateral, not as a primary motivation. The primary motivation, well, it's not even a motivation, it's just a natural expression of one's own joy, bliss, peace, and most importantly, bliss and ecstasy. And what other better form to express it in other than dance? And the second thing is Vedikai Kana Kannayiram Vendamo. Vedikai. You see, that is also very, very important. The spectacle that is created. You're not just seeing the dance, but you're becoming the dance as a yogi. If you see the dance, then you need not these two eyes, 1,000 eyes, which cannot obviously be physical. You look ridiculous like Indra did at some point of time. The inner eye is what we are referring to, the intuition. The 1,000 eyes refer to an enhanced perception. Even those who are blind can achieve the ultimate, because the blindness is only about the physicality, which anyway we have to transcend. So those of us with myopia, hypermetropia, and all other ophthalmological issues don't need to worry at all, because we are going to transcend these senses anyways. The earlier they go, in fact, in a higher sense, it's actually better. I would specifically advise this to Jagima also, who's having a lot of ophthalmological problems. It might look cruel, what I say, but in reality, it's a blessing in disguise. Because what others have to transcend, in spite of having that, there is an opportunity given to such people to go beyond right away. So that's the 1,000 eyes is just an enhanced perception of things as they are. So either you become the dance as a yogi, or just observe the dance in your inner eye of natarājā, which is the way of the scientist, of the searcher, of the researcher, and most importantly, the seeker. And we say rishi, you become a rishi, because then you are a seer. And a seer need not be having these two physical eyes. Whether they have it or not is immaterial, because it's only for the material. What you are looking at is the spiritual, beyond the material, beyond physics to the metaphysics. And there you need the inner intuitive eye. And only then you can see the Vedikai. Otherwise you just see the natya or nritya in a physical sense. See it in the metaphysical sense, it is Vedikai. So, āDikkoNDār and the Vedikai Kana Kannayiram Vendamo. Enhance your perception to an infinite level. Ayiram is just a symbolic way of saying infinite. It's not just 1,000. You go beyond that. Enhance your perceptivity to the ultimate. Unfortunately, this opening line is watered down by the literal translation, as I said, that he is dancing. To see that dance, don't we require 1,000 eyes? But as is the tradition and USP of our channel, Srimati Vasantha Kumari Sampath channel, we would not merely stop with such silly sounding superficialities, especially for those of us invested way too much into intellectual lifestyles rather than emotional, devoid of the figurative beauty of the fine arts in general and poetry in particular, letting only one half of our brains develop. We really need this. We'd instead dive deep, as always, into this amazing song's Advaitic relevance for us to improve our experience of life. Prior to that, let's get done with some of the usual stuff we do, a few technical details for the musical connoisseurs amongst us. Well, I'm not one amongst them for sure, though I share what little that I extract and know. I identify myself more with my ignorance than with my intelligence, more with what I do not know than with what I know, because what I do not know is infinite, whereas what I know is infinitesimal, tiny. So the song that VasanthiMā is going to sing for us now, āDikkoNDār, is set in the melody or ragam called māyamāLavagowLa, which is itself the 15th upper source or Mela-karta ragam. There are 72 of them, as I have told you earlier. And if you look at specifically the lakshana, or what we call as the characteristic of māyamāLavagowLa, it is described by none other than our own Mela-karta classifier from Karnataka, Sri Venkatamaki Dikshita. What does he say about this particular ragam, māyamāLavagowLa? He says, Purno Mālava Gaulakyaha Sagraho Giyate Sada. Purno Mālava-gaulakyaha Sagraho Giyate Sada, which in my interpretation refers to the fullness or Purno of this double harmonic scale. Any full harmonic scale will involve all the 7 swaras. Being one of the 72 Mela-karta ragas, it has to have Sa Ri Ga Ma Pa Da Ni, all 7 of them. And this is a double harmonic scale, māyamāLavagowLa, which enables eternity or life forever to all its compositions. Not only to all its compositions, but their composers as well. That's why the word Giyate is there in this lakshana description by Venkatamaki Dikshita. So their composers, Giyate as in the word Vageyakara. We call the trinity of Carnatic music as Vageyakaras. What does that mean? Tyagaraja, Shyama Shastri and Muthuswami Dikshitar, and before that the Tamil movers, one of whom we are discussing today, are all considered as Vageyakaras. Look at the word Vak, means the word, Giya, the musical composition, Kara, the source or the one who created that. So Vak, Giya, Karas. And that Giya is what is used here as a musical composer. So this enables, this raga, māyamāLavagowLa, enables eternity or life forever to all its compositions. Their composers, or Giyate, and consumers, because we say In the same Lakshana statement, it was said Graho. Graho usually is translated as planets. But here, in reality, what we do with grahana, bhojana grahana means to eat, to consume. Right? So consumers is graha or graho, as in the planets graha, which consume what? The rashis wherever they are. You know, the grahas are in rashis. The planets are in various zodiac signs, which we call as rashis. And what does rashi also literally mean? Treasure. And whose treasure is it? Belongs to the 27 nakshatras, the wives of the moon, which is our own mind. So the mind's power, our own mind's power, owns these treasures, and these ought to be consumed by the grahas or graho. Right? So the treasures of the stars in the attitudes, and because the grahas are not always in all the rashis, they keep moving around, right? So when you're born, they're in a particular location, and currently they are transiting some other location. So it's in the attitude or a bhava. Okay? People generally loosely translate it as a house, first house, second house, and so on to the 12th house. But actually, the more significant word is bhava. As in Bharatanatyam's bhava, raga, tala, all of which together make the natya special, as we shall see in Nataraja's case as well. So, where those grahas are, where those consumers are of our own different aspects of life, which energies are we consuming, in which bhavas are our consumers located, and who are our consumers? Our sense organs, our actuators, all of these need energy to operate, right? So where do they get energy from? From the treasures of our own mind's power, which is the nakshatras. So the bhavas occupied by these consumers, what do? They also reflect it back. They don't just consume and be done with it. There's some energy generated in a different transformed nature, right? So your various consumers, sensors, actuators, body, mind, intellect, have to reflect it back to those that they aspect. So if a graha is in the first house, it aspects the seventh. And if it's a special graha, like let's say Jupiter, it aspects not only the seventh but also fifth and ninth, etc. Right? So third and 10th for Saturn, fourth and eighth for Mars, seventh apart from seventh for all the grahas, and Rahu and Ketu, the ascending and descending nodes, the fifth and ninth just like Guru, Jupiter. So they are in some location, some Rashi, which they consume. They consume those treasures, those energies of that stars, which is nothing but our own mind power. But then they share that energy to where they look. And that is what we call as the drushti or the aspect. Following, of course, the law of reflection. What is the law of reflection? If I draw a normal to the surface on which it is getting reflected from, the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. That is, the angle between the incident ray and the normal should be equal to the angle between the reflected ray and the normal. So that's the law of reflection that our own consumers also have to follow as they reflect, making the angle of reflection same as the angle of incidence. But then why those special aspects? Well, it is also the scattering of light. There is a refraction which is happening. It's not all that light that is reflected. Some is transmitted, some is absorbed. And that which is transmitted is refracted because it's going into a different medium in which the refractive index is different, right? So that's my currently evolving perception of māyamāLavagowLa. Its Lakshana as described by Venkatamaki as Purno Mālavagowlākyaha Sagraho Giyate Sada, forever, eternity. The Sada is also very important there. So do share yours as well. If you think of māyamāLavagowLa, especially those of you who are into singing or any other instrumental music, Carnatic or Hindustani, please share your views of māyamāLavagowLa if you're into Carnatic, the equivalent of that, which is Bhairav, which I'll talk about in Hindustani as well. So you can use the comment section in the YouTube channel just below this video to share your thoughts on māyamāLavagowLa. Your experiences not only in singing it, maybe you're just a listener or you're a singer, but also obviously you have listened, only then you can sing. Then what is the experience you get when you sing, when you listen to songs in māyamāLavagowLa? Not only this one that VasanthiMā is going to sing today, āDikkoNDār, but there's so many thousands of songs in this very popular raga, which is in fact used to teach students right at the beginning. Many of the Sarali Varsais and all that. Well, the illusory prefix that we saw, I only talked about māLavagowLa, and even Venkatamaki only mentions it as māLavagowLa, not māyamāLavagowLa. So the illusory prefix Maya means illusion, right? Why do we prefix this to this ragam? To make it māyamāLavagowLa. Well, it's a latter day addition, this prefix. Perhaps referring to the devolving perceptions of fullness, especially in the Kali Yuga. Fullness or Purno, we said, right? There's a devolving perception of that. We don't have those thousand eye power, which is the inner eye power of intuition to see things as they are. We see them in prismatic ways through the colored lenses through which we observe things. And therefore, what it is in reality and what we think it is quite different from each other, because the thought process corrupts what the reality is. The Western philosophy or the Western way of thinking says that I think, therefore I am, and gives so much more importance to thought, but that's been the bane of their society, because once they give too much importance or significance to their thoughts, they lose the perception, which is what is the most important thing, the Shravana. So Maya is a later day addition perhaps to māyamāLavagowLa as a prefix, referring to the devolving perceptions. Evolving is improving, becoming better. Devolving is becoming worse. Devolving perceptions. Instead of enhancing your perception, which should be the what you get into as you age, many people have devolving perceptions. Yes, these eyes will have lesser power. The people get hearing issues, close to becoming deaf as they age. That's all fine. These are the physical things. What I'm talking about is metaphysical perception. That has to keep increasing with age. It has to be proportional. Otherwise, we are devolving. So these devolving perceptions of fullness, Purno, and the eternity, Sada, with the degradation of culture that we are observing, thanks to foreign influences for over 1,000 years, and still continues even after the so-called independence, due to the Macaulay education, because of which we still look at the West and the Westerner with awe and as if they are role models. If you remember, even in the beginning I talked about Aldous Huxley. Why don't I instead talk about some Indian scientist who has probably made the same discovery? Well, that's because many amongst you might take it of more value if Aldous Huxley says it rather than somebody else. Even Swami Vivekananda was greatly regarded in his own country, that is our Bharatvarsha, only after his address in the World Parliament of Religions at Chicago made him so popular in the West. Oh, so the Americans like him, then he must have something in him. So let's give him more respect. Which is why I have to go to Georgia Tech to do my PhD and come back to IISc and to India, and many others who could have done as good a PhD or as good an higher education in India itself, had to just go there because of that glamour associated with a foreign degree. Well, unfortunate, but that's the ground reality, at least as of today. things are improving thanks to the new education policy. Back from the diversion into what we are doing now for the song. Very interestingly, but not surprisingly, māyamāLavagowLa ragam is equivalent to, as I said earlier, Rag Bhairav in Hindustani. Bhairav. Bhaya Ava. Protection from fear. Bhaya is fear and Ava is to protect. Pahi Mam, Raksha Mam, Avatu Mam. All these mean the same. So what does Bhairav mean? He's the other dancer. This is the dance of life, natarājā. And Kala Bhairava, the dance of death in the crematoriums and more. Bhairava literally being our own nothingness, other avatar, as a fear-redeeming gatekeeper. It's not the avatar of somebody sitting somewhere there, but my own nothingness, your own nothingness, sitting in our own Sahasrara chakras, means that's the center. But the circle is infinite, doesn't stop there, it's all over. So our own nothingness is all over. And our own nothingness avatar, Bhairav, as a fear-redeeming gatekeeper. Kala Bhairav is said to be the gatekeeper of the city of Kashi, Varanasi, but essentially of all that there is. And all that there is doesn't need a gate because it's of infinite radius and there's no boundary to it. So, but to get us to there, to that place, those of us who are still so occupied in the physicality and have no glimpse of the metaphysicality, for us, we need this Bhairav, Kala Bhairav, Kala referring to the space-time, and the space-time boundaries, gatekeeper, who redeems us of our fears, because fear is imaginary, because fear is always of that which is not, which you think it might be, which you imagine something into the future. Worry is always about the past, which is history, and fear is always about the future, which is a mystery. But joy, bliss and ecstasy is about the present, and that's why today is called the present. It's a gift. So redeeming gatekeeper, Bhairava, to our, who what? To our inner self. Our inner self requires gatekeeping as well, to not get corrupted with the outer self, the identities that we have to take upon for various tasks. So no wonder then that today's song, āDikkoNDār and the Vedikai Kanakkannayiram Vendamo, on the dance of nothingness, is set to Bhairav Rag's Carnatic equivalent, māyamāLavagowLa. What better way to redeem meaningless fear than to dance it away? You dance away all your fears, my dear friend. Dance it away. The joys of dance, only the dancer knows. And I just let loose myself. I have always been doing that. When I dance, I just don't know where my limbs are going around. There's no pattern to it, but the pattern gets established from the interiority. So, Bhairav or māyamāLavagowLa, there's no better way, I say, to redeem meaningless fears. And fear is always meaningless. There's no, this is a meaningful fear and that's a meaningless fear. Bhaya Bhakti, people say, what nonsense, man, give me a break. Bhaya and Bhakti can never ever go together. Where there is Bhaya, there can be no Bhakti, and where there is Bhakti, there can be no Bhaya. It's only true Bhakti which can get you rid of this illusion called fear, right? So this meaningless fear has to be gotten rid of. The quickest way to do it and the surefire way that it works, and I myself am a living example, and here of course is the ultimate example, what we showcase. Dance away the meaningless fear like Kala Bhairava, like Natarājā, ensuring gatekeeping as a collateral benefit. Gatekeeping whether you want it for your outer physicalities, which is what most people are for, or even for your inner self, you can ensure gatekeeping just as a collateral benefit. So this song is, however, that is āDikkoNDār and the Vedikkaikana Kannayiram Vendamo, is, however, sometimes sung not in māyamāLavagowLa, but by a few singers. It's sung in the ragam called Mohanam, which, as you are all aware from a previous episode on this very channel, those of you who rightly point out which song of VasanthiMā in the past has been Mohanam, let's see who gets it right. And this Mohanam, as you know, is a 28th Melakarta or Harikamboji Janya. So it's not the original one of those 72, but it's a derivative. It's a derivative of the raga called Harikamboji, which itself is the 28th Melakarta. That's why we say Harikamboji Janya Ragam, Mohanam. And Mohanam, what does Moha means? To get attracted by or enrapturing, right? So this enrapturing Mohanam is indeed equally befitting for this popular dance item. What else is our dance supposed to do apart from an expression of your own inner bliss and ecstasy? What is the main collateral benefit it has is to entertain others, right? To enrapture others, to share your own ecstasy and bliss and spill it out on all those who come in that field or that sphere. And here's an infinite sphere, so everyone is anyway into the dancing cosmic sphere of natarājā, or for that matter, Kala Bhairava. So what's a dance of, we already talked about ragam, what's a dance or song without a rhythm? It's akin to a fatherless orphan. Without ragam, it would be a motherless orphan. Now, without talam, it would be a fatherless orphan. So the beat or talam here is ādi, or the ancient, antique, ādi eka, which being ancient and beginningless, ādi means that which is without a beginning, like our friend here, right, is the one and only one, eka, or ekatala we say, truly fatherless orphan anyways. That which doesn't have a source, because it is the source of all, right? And not some person sitting somewhere. Again, I keep emphasizing that, even if it tires you, because that has been so deeply ingrained in all of us that we always get into that stupidity, especially those of us who are religious, always thinking that there is a God somewhere in Vaikunta, heaven, Kailasha, or whatever other, Jannat, etc. No. Right here and now, within us, within you, within me, and everywhere. Without omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience, and eternity, the concept of God that man has created has no meaning. Yes, God is the creation of man. Man is not the creation of God. Let's make it very, very clear. And this concept of God has to help us in our journey, rather than become obstacles in our journey, which is what most religions are unfortunately leading to, because of the lack of understanding, deterioration of knowledge and wisdom over the years from when the rishis first saw it, and their derivatives in around the world. Because just as we say Sanskrit is the mother of all languages, Tamil is the father of all languages, similarly Sanatana Dharma, or the eternal principle of righteousness, is the source of all religions around the world. Not only those which originated in Bharatavarsha, like Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, etc., or Vaishnavism, Shaivism, etc., but even the others which have germinated all across the world, you will see they are all having certain aspects of Sanatana Dharma which they have amplified, and certain most aspects of Sanatana Dharma which they have completely discarded. It is that kind of a selective approach which has made those religions always have certain issues, and therefore you see many people are going away, especially the youngsters, from religious ways of life purely because of that specialized approach. No, when you have a holistic approach like what the real Sanatana Dharma has, then it's the youngsters who are going to jump in and go for it in the first place. So this Ekatala is the truly fatherless orphan Adi anyways. So indeed, melody and rhythm, ragam and talam, are the progenitors of all of creation, not only of music, of songs, but all of creation. Without ragam and talam, nothing in space-time would exist. That's why the creation involves the damru, the sound which involves a talam, and there is a ragam associated with the fire. The way it dances, haven't you seen the way the fires dance? Wow. Only one to beat it is our own nothingness, not the physicality of what we are. So of all creation that we perceive here and now, whether we recognize its source or not, the source is ragam and talam. In today's unfortunate and uncivilized trend of ignoring one's own parents, physical body's parents, that is mother and father, are put into old age homes or tortured by their children, unfortunately. And that karma is going to obviously catch up with them sometime or the later. But then what to speak of the ultimate father and mother of the entire universe of creation, ragam and talam. How much more care we should give to this melody and rhythm. That's what we are all sourced out of. So, with less than a week to go for my most favorite festival, Mahā-śiva-râtri, which also happens to be Jagima's birthday, by the way. With less than a week to go, 5 days, and 5 is a very special number for Shiva. I have written in Katham an article about the Panchamukha of the Shiva and what each one of them actually symbolizes. I'll not get into that. So please do read that if you're interested. So 5-day countdown has begun to Maha, great Shiva, that which is not Ratri, night. Just like for everythingness, the daylight is so significant. For our own nothingness, the night is so significant. And there is a Shivaratri every month, which we call as the Mahā-śiva-râtri, just before the Amavasya. And this is a Mahā-śiva-râtri, one of those 12 each year. So that's the significance of this. So it's very, very important indeed. Let's enjoy it thoroughly. So with less than a week to go for Mahā-śiva-râtri, VasanthiMā most aptly takes all of us on a virtual pilgrimage to the spiritually charged hyper-vortex of Chidambaram, natarājā temple. What a perfect location for that temple in terms of the latitude and longitude, both geographic and magnetic. And it still retains that magnetic attraction to the true seekers in all of us. To convert the seeker to a seer, the sadhak to the rishi. The potential is immense at Chidambaram. It has done to so many thousands of siddhas in the past. It's continuing to do in the present, will continue to do forever in the future. It's a supercharged hyper-vortex, right? And that's what VasanthiMā is most aptly taking all of us into. A virtual pilgrimage. A yātrā, an inner yātrā, to something which is symbolized in the outer, the spiritually charged hyper-vortex of Chidambaram Natarājā temple. Of course, in tandem with the thousands of our inner eyes too. The third eyes too. It has to go along with VasanthiMā to this particular place, enhancing their perceptivity. Don't worry too much about the perceptivity of your outer eye unless your job or tasks involve too much of eye work. Focus more on enhancing the inner eye perception. So, this song has the potential to do that too. Listen very, very attentively, consciously, with full awareness. Not enotano. Listen to it very carefully. Enhancing their perceptivity over the yātrā so that they, the third eyes, the intuitive perceptivity of all of us, are able to witness. The third eyes should be able to witness the ecstatic dance of our own nothingness, lost in its own bliss, ananda, in the space of consciousness, space, ambaram. You say gagana, antariksha, but one beautiful word for akasha is also ambaram. In the space of, in the ambaram of what? Our awareness, our consciousness, our prajna. And another name for a prajna or consciousness, awareness is chit. Sat, chit, ananda. So, chit-ambaram, the space of our own consciousness, is what is reflected in the outer physical world as a city or a town of Chidambaram in Tamil Nadu. So in the space of consciousness, Chidambaram is where we want to get onto the pilgrimage with this song. Just a couple of weeks back, we had the grace, in fact, not only grace, but blessings, honor and privilege, I would say, of discussing the same Chidambaram Natarājā temple in this very channel of Srimati Vasantha Kumari Sampath. It was in the context, if you remember right, of VasanthiMā's rendition of, guess. Yes, Shri Shuddhananda Bharati's very first song. If you haven't watched it, please go back and watch that. Sung impromptu by Shuddhananda Bharati as a prodigious little composer when he was a precocious 8-year-old child, gracefully blessed with a gift of poetry and words right after his dhyana or meditation in this very presence, that is at the Chidambaram Natarājā temple. Today's song, āDikkoNDār and the Vedikkaikkaana Kannāyiram Vendamo. On the other hand, this song of today delves deep into a description of the cosmic dance of our own nothingness in its entire splendor. The composer Sri muttutāNDavar, I'm revealing the name for the first time, but many of you would have guessed it. The composer, and also seen in the titles of this video, of course. The composer Sri muttutāNDavar is transported to absolute rapture at his very first glimpse of our cosmic dance. And cosmic dance cannot be glimpsed with these eyes, but with the inner eye, right? So he was transported to absolute rapture, and that's what is exhibited in this whole song. You'll hear it very soon. Such a rapture is inevitable, not only for our composer Sri muttutāNDavar, but for our singer Vasantha Kumari's Sampath, VasanthiMā, and for all of us listeners too, simply because of all inclusivity. That all inclusivity is so important, and you don't need things like tolerance, etc. Tolerance is only when you have somebody who is different from you, but okay, grudge, you try to accept them into your fold. No. All inclusivity. Then it's part of you, the belongingness. Simply because of all inclusivity. Yes. It's not just our own nothingness which dances. It's not this natarājā alone who's dancing, but the everythingness around the nothingness. In his avatar as the king of dance, synchronizes in unison with him. It, if you want to call it nothingness, instead of Shiva or a natarājā, Natarani if you want to call it her, or the very symbol of dance, one who has become dance, we call it it, and its dance are one and the same. And we synchronize in unison with that, so that there's no difference between nothingness and everythingness and creativity. Already I showed the symbol of creativity through this Damru, the symbol of dissolution or Rudra through this fire, and the symbol of Vishnu through this Abhaya Mudra. So Brahma, Vishnu and Rudra, Mahesha are all inclusive in the Natarājā symbolism. The most comprehensive symbolism you can have anywhere in the world, at any time in the world. Packing divine power into his lyrics, the enraptured Sri muttutāNDavar. I love it because it rhymes with Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar, my favorite composer, who was a couple of 100 years after, maybe even more, after muttutāNDavar. So muttutāNDavar is a precursor to all that. Just like Purandaradasa, Annamacharya, that period is when muttutāNDavar. While Purandaradasa did it in Karnataka to get it into the Kriti form of the Pallavi, Anupallavi and Charanam classifications of all songs in Carnatic. Purandaradasa did that in Karnataka, Annamacharya did that in Andhra, and muttutāNDavar did that in Tamil Nadu almost independently. So these are all the three great people, not together called as the mover anyway. The movers are either all Tamil or the ones from Tiruvarur. These Tamil mover, by the way, are not from Tiruvarur, but they're all from the same place. That is Sirgari. I'll come to that very shortly. That's another amazing place. You have had a glimpse of it when I talked about Tirunjana Sambandhar earlier, but we'll talk a little more about it. So, packing divine power into his lyrics, the enraptured Sri muttutāNDavar enables singers like VasanthiMā, as well as us, the listeners also, to easily recognize that even the so-called non-living accessories of the emperor of dance, natarājā, such as his or our spirit's anklets, you see at the ankles, between the feet and the legs, these anklets, or what we call as golusu or gejje. We do even a gejje puja, right? So even the so-called non-living accessories of the emperor of dance, such as his or our spirit's anklets, when you say Natarājā's anklets, it could mean this, what you're visualizing, this person's anklets, but in reality, our own nothingness. So our spirit's anklets, they are. That which separates our feet and legs at the spiritual level, an ornamentation for that is the anklet, right? So even these so-called non-living accessories, we can easily recognize that they are going to be dancing in synchrony with our own nothingness. First example, anklet. Next, what do we say? His or our soul's minimal leather clothing. Nataraja's minimum leather clothing. Minimum for in terms of clothing or even comfort levels for that matter, in the form of elephant or tiger hide. I mean skin, called as HIDE in English, hide. Trishul, our own trident. Trishul, our crowning glories of moon. You would see that here too, the moon on the top of the head and the Ganga river, right? Our matted hair, you see, spreading all over. The Dhamru, already talked about it, representing creation. Our drum. Pinaka, our bow. Our axe. Our necklaces. And our garlands. All these flowers, woven with beautiful flowers, gathered by none other than our own literally tiger-footed nature. Different aspects of ourselves we are personifying. So who's weaving the garlands for my friend Natarājā, our own nothingness here? It's Vyagrapada. So woven with beautiful flowers, gathered by our literally tiger-footed nature of Vyagrapada, nimble-footedly. You see in the feet of a leopard or a tiger or any of these wild cats, or even the domestic cat for that matter. We have a few in the terrace right now. Nimble-footedly accessing rare forest flowers. When? At the dawn of Arunodaya, and Arunodaya is before Suryodaya, remember. Aruna, I talked to you about him in one of the previous discourses, is the charioteer. The charioteer has to always go ahead, right? Like Krishna does, Parthasarathi does for Partha, Arjuna. Same way, this nimble-footed Vyagrapada, if you think of him as a person, it's tiger-footed. But actually our own tiger-footed nature of Vyagrapada, nimble-footedly accessing rare forest flowers at the dawn of Arunodaya, preceding Suryodaya, prior to their nectar, because these flowers, the forest flowers that are there, the nectar might be sucked out by the honeybees. Even before that, even before the nectar is being extracted by the buzzing and sipping honeybees, post Brahma Muhurta, Vyagrapada goes and gets it to make a garland, weave a garland for Natarājā, our own nothingness. Our own tiger-footed nimbleness does that. Up to these garlands, we already saw anklets, drum, trishul, etc., right? Up to these garlands and necklaces, right, were a listing of the examples of what the spiritually underdeveloped. We talked of economically underdeveloped nations, but more important to talk about spiritually underdeveloped human beings, and that's the vast majority of us. So all these were a listing of examples of what the spiritually underdeveloped perceive as inanimate. If even such accessories are in synchrony with the dance, you see as I dance, my Rudraksha dancing with me in synchrony, in resonance, the same natural frequency, and bursting onto energy because of the resonance. Of course, in the presence of damping of materialistic nature, you don't see all that resonance. But once you get rid of that materialistic damping, the spirituality takes over and the true resonance happens to infinite energy. Mukti or moksha, you get liberated. So even such accessories are in synchrony with the dance. So what to speak of the physically animate entities? Yes, there are physically animate entities around him too, right? It's not just his all his dance accessories, clothing and the necklace, etc., right? What to speak of the physically animate entities around us? Not around Natarājā as a person, but around us, our own nothingness. Yes, apart from the wardrobe accessories, also dancing in chorus with our nothingness, who has mastered dance. Natarājā has mastered dance. That's why it's called the Raja of Natana or Natya or Nritya, right? So dancing in chorus with our own nothingness, who has mastered dance, is who? Our own mysticism. You can see it very clearly over here, but you see what is coming out here? The snake, Vasuki. So our own nothingness, who has mastered dance, along with him, dancing in synchrony, is our own mysticism. Our own nothingness, Shiva, Natarājā. Our own mysticism, Vasuki, the snake. That's the representation. Pointing to our ability to see everything as it is. That's what mysticism is all about. That's what a snake or a Vasuki is all about. Vasu means the universality, and the ability to see that is Vasuki. So, our own mysticism represented by Vasuki around the neck of Shiva, as I said, and also for Ganesha, it's the Yagnopavita, the sacred thread, is made out of the snake. Okay, apart from his belt to tie up the modaka spilling out of his big stomach, right? So, dancing in chorus with our own nothingness, who has mastered dance in our own, is our own mysticism, giving him company, right? As a partner, represented by the snake Vasuki, pointing to our ability. So what does the snake Vasuki point out? The mysticism points out to our ability to see everything as it is, which is why we need those 1,000 eyes to enhance perceptivity, right? Our ability to see everything as it is rather than sully it with cloudy thoughts. Our sattvic gunas in the form of the temple priests. So it's not just the snake who's dancing with him. Second live entity, set of live entities rather, is our sattvic gunas. Our mysticism is in the form of a snake. Our nothingness is in the form of Natarājā. They're dancing together. Similarly, our sattvic gunas, our purity, our nature of purity, our qualities associated with purity, all those sattvic gunas are in the form of the temple priests, what we call as the Dikshitas at Chidambaram Natarājā temple, Kovil, right? So, but will just those gunas be enough? No, it's holistic, right? So our Rajasic gunas also in the form of the celestial suras, they are dancing with him too, with our nothingness too. And our Tamasic gunas in the form of so-called asuras. Our BMI toolkit, body, mind, intellect toolkit also, represented by who? The residents of the town of Chidambaram. At that time, about 3,000 of them, I guess. So each 1,000 represents a body, mind, and intellect, occupying our inner conscious space, chit-ambaram, right? Enunciated crisply as Yoga Sutras, right? By who? Our right royal Rajayogic path of surrender. Yes, Patanjali, right? So, occupying our inner conscious space, Chidambaram, because Patanjali was somebody who lived in Chidambaram for a whole long time, and that's where he wrote the Yoga Sutras. So, apart from the body, mind and intellect, our body, mind and intellect, being represented by the residents of the town of Chidambaram, occupying our inner conscious space, not just accidental space, but conscious space-time, enunciated crisply as Yoga Sutras. Sutra means that which is abstract, synopsis. Enunciated crisply as Yoga Sutras by our right royal Rajayogic path of surrender, discipline with the Anjali Mudra. Namaste, Namaskar. Pat Anjali, represented by the great seer, great seer Rishi, Maharishi Pat Anjali, deeply associated with Chidambaram, as I said. And of course, ultimately, we've talked about Vyagrapada, we've talked about Patanjali, we talked about Vasuki, we talked about the priests of the Chidambaram Natarājā temple, the Dikshitars, the residents or citizens of Chidambaram. Left the best out for the last. Yes. Ultimately, as the crescendo, our very life energy, as the empress of dark matter. This is dark matter. The empress of him, the dark matter, our own nothingness, is nothing but dark matter is Mahakala. So his empress should have to be Mahakali, our dark energy. Yes, dark energy is of great interest to physicists today, modern physicists today. There's a lot of research going on around the world on dark energy, which is what even black holes will dissipate into as we move forward. So our very life energy as the empress of dark matter or Mahakala, yes, our dark energy, Mahakali, the potential energy of death, all dance in symphonic Ardhanarishvara Tattva. The energy and the nothingness are two sides of the same coin, the Ardhanarishvara Tattva. So obviously there's a symphony in their dance too. So they all dance in symphonic, whether it's the so-called inanimate or the animate, they all dance in symphonic Ardhanarishvara Tattva or principle, wondrously, wonderfully, and yet unsurprisingly, as they are indeed inseparable, indeed holistic, inseparably holistic. So how else can they dance but in symphony? In the reality of absolute mutual belongingness. Kali belongs to Kala, Kala belongs to Kali. It's not the Kali of Kala or Kala of Kali, but Kali of Kala and Kala of Kali. Yes, that's the Ardhanarishvara Tattva. Absolutely mutual belongingness. In fact, all observed separations, if any, between the Ajna Chakra and the Sahasrara Chakra, between the Kali and the Kala, between our own nothingness and its energy, all observed separations, if any, are purely the repercussions of our karmically earned ignorance and illusion, ajnana and maya. It's not just beauty that's in the eyes of the beholder. We say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. That's an English proverb, right? But it's not beauty alone that's in the eyes of the beholder, but ignorance and illusion too, for some of us, somewhere, somehow, sometime or the other, right? In such ignorance and illusion, we turn a deaf ear or fail to be amazed by even the marvelous fact that a musically untrained novice, right? We'll come to his story later on after VasanthiMā sings, but even an untrained novice such as Sri muttutāNDavar could pen such masterpieces. Today's is only one song. He's written so many of them. Only 60 kritis and 25 padams are available today, and that's an unfortunate history part of it. But amazing productivity of a novice such as Sri muttutāNDavar. He could pen such masterpieces. Can't we wonder about that? And that too, they're tuned to melodious ragam and rhythmic thalam, enrapturing us all. Let's give some room to wonder, awe. Sri muttutāNDavar isn't alone in being enraptured by this dance of symphonic dance, synchronized dance, rhythmic dance. He is not alone. muttutāNDavar is not the only one who has sung about natarājā. About 200 years after muttutāNDavar, another of the Tamil movers, the first foremost is muttutāNDavar, another of the three, that is the Tamil movers, namely movers and shakers as they call them. The second one, Marimuthu Pillai, also sung almost exclusively on natarājā, on our king of cosmic dance. And so have many other composers who have just fallen in love at first sight, inner sight that is, with our uninhibitedly dancing nothingness. You just get into a dhyana, my dear folks. And when you get absorbed in the sahasrara and the nothingness which occupies it, or the other way around, doesn't matter because they're one and the same. It's absolutely amazing, unbelievable. Take my word for it, try it out. With our uninhibitedly dancing nothingness, its gala renunciation, renowned gallantry, celestial operas, and celebratory Parvati, celebratory operations. What all? Uninhibitedly dancing nothingness, its gala renunciation, renowned gallantry, celestial operas, and celebratory operations, Parvati operations. Well, I'll be back with the composer's biography and a word-by-word meaning of the song after VasanthiMā's rendition. Make us all dance to your tunes, VasanthiMā.
āDikkoNDār அந்த வேடிக்கை காணகண் ஆயிரம் வேண்டாமோ 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 āDikkoNDār அந்த வேடிக்கை காண கண் ஆயிரம் வேண்டாமோ நாடி துதிப்பவர் பங்கில் உரைப்பவர் நாடி துதிப்பவர் பங்கில் உரைப்பவர் நாடி துதிப்பவர் பங்கில் உரைப்பவர் நாடி துதிப்பவர் பங்கில் உரைப்பவர் நம்ப திரு செம்பொன் நம்பலவான நம்ப திரு செம்பொன் நம்பலவான நாடி துதிப்பவர் பங்கில் உரைப்பவர் நம்ப திரு செம்பொன் நம்பலவான நம்ப திரு செம்பொன் நம்பலவான ஆடிக்கொண்டாரந்த வேடிக்கை காண கண் ஆயிரம் வேண்டாமோ நாடிக்கொண்டாரந்த வேடிக்கை காண கண் ஆயிரம் வேண்டாமோ ஆறு நவமணி மாலைகளாட ஆறு நவமணி மாலைகளாட ஆடும் அரவும் படம் விரித்தாட ஆறு நவமணி மாலைகளாட ஆடும் மரபும் பரவிரித்தாட சீரணி கொன்றை மலத்தொடையாட சிதம்பர தேராட சீரணி கொன்றை மலத்தொடையாட சிதம்பரம் தேராட ஆறு நவமணி மாலைகளாட ஆடும் மரபும் படம் விரித்தாட சீரணி கொன்றை மலத்துடையாட சிதம்பரம் தேராட பேரணி வேதிய தில்லை 3000 பேர்களும் பூஜித்து கொண்டு நின்றாட பேரணி வேதிய தில்லை 3000 பேர்களும் பூஜித்து கொண்டு நின்றாட காரணி காளி எதிர்த்து நின்றாட கனக சபை தனிலே காரணி காளி எதிர்த்து நின்றாட கனக சபை தனிலே ஆடிக்கொண்டார் அந்த வேடிக்கை காண கண் ஆயிரம் வேண்டாமோ ஆடிக்கொண்டார் அந்த வேடிக்கை காண கண் ஆயிரம் வேண்டாமோ
Oh my God, you tripped the light. Fantastic. You tripped the light. Fantastic. Well, that's a metaphor for dance. And you tripped the light. Fantastic, VasanthiMā. Just like Tirunjana Sambandar, whom we discussed recently, maybe a couple of weeks back, let's say, as one of the prominent three. Again, we are talking of movers everywhere. Trinities, right? Tirunjana Sambandar, whom we discussed recently in one of the, as one of the prominent three amongst the 63 Nayanmars, Upper Sundarar being the other two, And along with Manikavasagar, they become 4 Nalvars. Manikavasagar not being so-called Nayanmar, within quotes. So, and the other 2 of the Tamil Carnatic Trinity was Sri muttutāNDavar, 1560 to 1640, some say, but more often than not, he is ascribed the period 1525 to 1600 in the Common Era. He was also born, like Tirunjana Sambandar and the other 2 of the Tamil movers. Sri muttutāNDavar was also born in a famous temple town. Don't miss to visit it post-COVID. He was also born in a famous temple town called Sirkari, near Chidambaram. Sirkari has been home to not only Tirunjana Sambandar and the Tamil movers, including Sri muttutāNDavar, but many, many other greats. And it's very close to Chidambaram. muttutāNDavar was born in a family of Isai-Velalars. Isai-Velalars literally are those who cultivate music. Velalars, agriculturists. Agriculturists or farmers typically grow crops, right? Except for the rich ones who bring in the tractors and destroy the capital city and burn things. Most farmers are cultivating crops. But here are the Isai-Velalars who are cultivating music. Essentially musical instruments, because they are those who design veenas, mridangams, and many other things like flutes, etc. So essentially the Isai-Velalars or the cultivators of music are musical instrument designers, makers, and players too. They design them, make them, and play them as well, all in one. So essentially they are musicians who did not serve the kings, but who served the temples. The concept of Devadasi you would have heard. This is very similar to that, Isai-Velalar, but creating musical instruments and playing them for the sake of the temple. Completely dedicating their lives to the temple. So this child that was born in such a family of Isai-Velalars in Sirkari was named Tandavan after the dancing deity at Chidambaram. Because Shiva Nataraja's dance in Chidambaram is called a Tandavam. And this young child born in Sirkari in the outskirts of Chidambaram, about a 4.5 hour walk those days. So he was called Tandavan by the Isai-Velalars. As a youngster, Tandavan suffered. At that time he was not called Tandavar, which is a more respectable word. Tandavan, out of more loving nature towards a young kid. As a youngster, Tandavan suffered, unfortunately, an incurable wasting disease which caused havoc not only to his physical, mental and intellectual well-being, but to his appearance both in society as well as professional competence. Remember, they were Isai-Velalars, musical instrument designers, makers and players. His professional competence also suffered because of his rare disease. In his and the professional competence which suffered was, of course, in his family business of musical instrumentation. On account of this debilitating condition which weakened him so much, Tandavan was soon shunned by everyone, like how lepers used to be shunned for a very long period of time, unfortunately, because of the way they looked and the way they were degrading in terms of their bodies, the pus that was there, etc. Many people used to shun lepers. Similarly, muttutāNDavar was shunned by everyone in the town, except for one person who was to become the Mona Lisa of his life, who was to become his interim inspiration, not forever, interim inspiration and muse. For painters, we call them as a muse, right? Similarly, for the artist in muttutāNDavar, also he's not yet an artist. He's a person with a debility, a wasting disease. But there was one bright hot spot amongst the many who were shunning him, his muse. Before his own namesake, the real Tandavan of Chidambaram takes over. That is the real muse for muttutāNDavar and me and you and everyone else. Our own nothingness is the real muse. But sometimes it comes in a form that is much more different looking, and is the same in the case of the muttutāNDavar story as well, life history rather. So before the real Tandavan of Chidambaram took over as the muse, who was that exceptional person? Well, Tandavan was welcomed wholeheartedly at only one place, to relish the audio visual performance of an artistically talented lady of resplendent divine service. Resplendent divine Deva, service Dasi, Deva Dasi. Artistically talented lady of resplendent divine service. This Devadasi was aptly named as the fortune of nothingness. The fortune of nothingness. Yes, Shiva Bhagyam was the name of this lady, the Devadasi. The news of Tandavan's frequent visits to the Devadasi's home, Shiva Bhagyam's home, was trending news. Even in those days of without Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, etc., still it was trending news. Because it's a small town, right? Gossip happens. So it's a trending news in the small town. And that made things worse, extending his physiological isolation to a psychological isolation too, aggravating his already pitiable status, social status, and leaving him all alone to fend for himself. But this unsought loneliness evolved into solitude. Subtle difference. Loneliness and solitude. Loneliness can be a psychological issue, can lead to many psychological diseases. But solitude can be magical in evolving and transforming us into the ultimate. So that's what happened here. Into solitude, a spiritual blessing in disguise. Being shunned can also be worked around if you're smart enough. So no wonder Tandavan's muse, Shivabhagyam, inspired his future calling through her devotional songs and dances. For he ended up singing hundreds of songs on the dance of nothingness, of which, unfortunately, as I said, only about 60 kritis and 25 padams survived the test of time. That too thanks to Annamalai University. Yes, thanks to the humongous efforts of Sri Tirupamburam Swaminatha Pillai, who managed not only to compile their lyrics, there are many great Pillais in the Annamalai Chidambaram area. So, Sri Tirupamburam Swaminatha Pillai managed not only to compile the lyrics of these chosen 60 songs that he could gather, but also personally tune them to different ragams which he thought appropriate. So the ragams we have, whether it is Mohanam or māyamāLavagowLa for today's song which VasanthiMā just sang, those were all not necessarily the original ragams in which muttutāNDavar himself sang it. All that was lost. So it is the grace of Tirupamburam Swaminatha Pillai who tuned them to different ragams, the few that were remaining, the 60 kritis and the 25 padams, with of course gracious funding from the renowned local university. There is a university located in Chidambaram, local in that sense, but it's well known around India and some parts of the world as well. The local university, by the way, is named after another epithet of our own nothingness. Not Natarājā University, but Annamalai University. Annamalai is the name of our own nothingness in Tiruvannamalai, Arunachaleshwara. Yes, Annamalai University funded this particular research. Thanks to him, we have today's song as well as many others. Totally 85. So there's an interesting prelude to this inexplicably magical foray into Tandavan's lyrical poetry. That's the game of playful Leela, or the intricate complication of the law of karma. Depending on your currently preferred point of view, you can call it either playful Leela or intricate complication of the law of karma. Tired and hungry on a certain night, remember he had a disease, and then because of his visits to Shiva Bhagyam, the Devadashi's house, he was further shunned. So he was not living in his own home with his family. He was just like a beggar around the temple. He used to be in the temple most of the time, have only one meal a day. So he was tired and hungry. He didn't even have the enough strength, if food was given to him, to take it and put it into his mouth. That was the level of weakness that he had. So tired and hungry on a certain night, he fainted. While walking around a deserted room which housed the chariots used to take the Sirgari temple deities like pallaks and ther and all that, right? For street processions, right? Ur Tiruvizha we call it, on festive occasions, but were usually unattended on the regular days. Festive days are just a few around the year. Of course, Sanatana Dharma has one almost every day, but in different cities and different temples. In a given temple, there are a certain fixed set of festive days on which these vehicles are used to take the Utsava Murti, or Urchavar as we call in Tamil, around the main streets of the town. But the rest of the days, that particular room in which all these vehicles are kept will be unattended. So he was just wandering around the temple and just fainted within that room where these chariots, etc. were kept, pallaks, ther, etc. As per the daily routine, the priests locked up all of the temple gates, the gopurams, east, north, west and south, were all locked up. Maybe around 8 p.m., 9 p.m. is the typical temple closing time. Because they didn't know that this guy, Tandavan, was in an unconscious state because he had fainted within that room, which nobody usually cared to look at unless it is a festive day. And that day wasn't, that night wasn't. So when Tandavan recovered his consciousness, because he had fainted, he recovered his consciousness by himself somehow. He recognized that he was unintentionally locked up overnight. But he stoically bore the brunt of hunger, as he has done for the previous days. This day, it was even more because of his fainting. He had not even had that one single meal that day. So he bore the brunt of hunger in invocations. What other way to get rid of hunger? Just invoke the ultimate energy within yourself. That's how Ekadashi days are such a pleasure for me every fortnight, even though I fast for 42 hours every Ekadashi, every fortnight. So luckily for Thandavan, after a while, the daughter of the temple priest happened to come over with a bowl of food, which is what he was actually looking for. So hungry. As he was too weak to even eat by himself, as I already said, this daughter of the priest fed Thandavan. It was quite common those days, the kind of service that people engaged in. You see somebody who's incapable of doing something essential for his life, his or her life, you help them, irrespective of who they are. So this temple priest's daughter fed this particular person, Thandavan. She was still not Sri muttutāNDavar, by the way. Thandavan was fed by this girl. And before her departure, because she had fed him, she had the right to ask him for something. So before her departure, as a remedy for his own painful experience and existence, she advised him, even though she was a little girl, she was smart because she was a temple priest's daughter. So she advised Thandavan to go to Chidambaram. Already is in Sirgari temple. Says, there's much more power there, my dear friend. You go to Chidambaram and sing a song every day in praise of the king of dance, Natarājā, our own nothingness. So she is saying, she left. So while Thandavan called her back, say he was protesting. He said, yes, you are giving me this solution for my wasting disease to go and sing in Chidambaram. One, of course, with all this weakness, I have to travel that far, and you are telling me to go there every day. And then you are asking me to sing. I don't know what the hell that is. I've heard Shiva Bhagyam singing, the Devadasi singing, but I know nothing about singing or composing. Sing my own songs? I don't even sing other songs. So the little girl suggested that he carefully listen. That's where music starts, my dear friend. You can't just go ahead and start singing, listening. So this little girl, smart as she was, suggested that you are having trouble with getting words, right? Your vocabulary. Vocabulary is a problem for lyrics. You just carefully listen. Do shravana. To what? To the words actually casually being spoken by the devotees. Whoever enters the temple, you go there, whoever are amongst the first devotees, they might be, most of them might be silent. Some of them might be talking to each other, chit-chatting with each other, or talking to their own nothingness in the form of natarājā, aloud, sometimes talking aloud and stuff in their mind. So whatever those words are, you capture them, even if they are casually spoken. Whoever enters the temple, first people, whatever they are speaking that you listen, use those words. Utilize them in your lyrics, is what she told. So he did that. Suggested being in his own sankalpa. Thought, okay, that's a good idea. Let me try it out. I've tried so many things, didn't work. Maybe this girl is saying something. Let me try it out. Whatever words the devotees casually speak while they are entering the temple, I utilize them in the lyrics, expounding upon the significance of keenly listening to other bhaktas in satsang. That's what this little girl has inculcated in him by expounding upon the significance of keenly listening or shravana to other bhaktas in a satsang, in a good company, in truthful company, the company of seekers. The key is active listening, not passive listening. Active listening to the genuine devotees, satsang, right? with those who are seekers, with involvement. Okay, when you're listening, what is active listening? Full involvement in what you do. With involvement and yet without entanglement. See, that's always tricky. You get involved so much in something that sometimes you get entangled in it. Like my hair, sometimes very difficult to disentangle them. But my daughter taught me some tricks thanks to her own long hairs, and which works now. So involvement without entanglement, which was anyway the nature of Tandavan's relationship with his muse, right? He was involved with Shiva Bhagyam, the Devadasi, but he never got entangled with her. Most people in such situation will get entangled, not just involved in an affair. That's an entanglement. This was a person who was only involved but not entangled. And so he knew how to do it. But this had to be applied to a different context now. So it's only after the girl disappeared. Yes, the priest's daughter disappeared. And it's only after that Tandavan realized that she was none other than the divine energy in our Ajna Chakra, personified Shakti, Parvati, who also, by the way, the same divine energy personified in the same temple also fed the breast milk of knowledge, Jnanapal as we say, to Tirunjana Sambandar when he was 3 years old, a little boy, left on the temple tank steps by his father who was going to take a dip for his Sandhyavandanam. And he was crying in hunger, and Parvati fed him her own breast milk. Same temple. Magically, muttutāNDavar was okay. muttutāNDavar's illness was partially cured. Not fully, partially cured. But way better than what he was. So just prior to sunrise, at least he could now probably walk, taking the advice of Parvati in the form of that temple priest. And this, his suspicion that was Parvati herself was set right. Because just prior to sunrise, when the Brahma Muhurta, that is Arunodaya, before Suryodaya, when the priests opened up the temple, they were pleasantly surprised. Why? They were of course shocked that there was somebody who was locked up in the temple, but they knew this person because he was there day in and day out every day in that temple. So they knew what kind of a pathetic situation he was in, physically, psychologically. So they were pleasantly surprised to see the usually weak and sickly Tandavan looking not only hale and hearty, but effulgently radiant. Effulgently radiant. With pearly clarity. You know pearls? Real pearls, that is. Not some of the duplicate Hyderabadi pearls. Right? The Bhagyanagar pearls. Yes. So looking not only hale and hearty, my dear friend Tandavan, but effulgently radiant with pearly clarity. As clear as a pearl. Thereby, and pearl is called muttu in Tamil, okay, by the way. So, he had so much of effulgent radiance and pearly clarity that he earned the prefix of a pearl, thereby earning him a prefix of a pearl or muttu in Tamil, making him popular as not just Tandavan, but muttutāNDavar. The suffix an changing to ar out of respect that this was a person who was blessed by none other than our own nothingness's energy, āDikkoNDār, Mahā-śiva-râtri. So following the advice of our own divine energy personified, muttutāNDavar trekked daily from Sirgari to Chidambaram and back. During his very first visit, he heard some visitors to the Natarājā temple discussing amongst themselves about heaven on earth. The concept of heaven is falling down, crumbling today. But they were talking about the concept of heaven on earth. Whether it's in Tamil or in Sanskritam, we would say Bhuloka Kailaya Giri. Bhuloka Kailaya Giri means Bhu Kailash, as we say, right? So Bhuloka Kailaya Giri, that's how they were referring to the Natarājā temple as a heaven on earth. Promptly, active listening, he caught those words. Full involvement, no entanglement. Promptly incorporating those very utterances, Bhuloka Kailaya Giri, muttutāNDavar sang a kriti. Spontaneously, at the unique Garbhagriha or sanctum sanctorum of Chidambaram Natarājā Kovil temple, which houses the ultimate secret or Chidambara Rahasya, the conscious space secret of what? Of nothingness. Literally nothingness, not just figuratively or metaphorically, my dear friend. Chidambara Rahasyam or nothingness vacuum, in evacuated spatial and ethereal symbolism of the subtlest element. We have earth, water, fire and air as the grosser elements. The subtlest element, our Vishuddhi chakra, at which Shiva's poison was stopped by Adi Parashakti, making him a Nilakanta, the place where Vagdevi, Saraswati and Brahma reside. That Vishuddhi chakra in our spinal cord, in the Sushumna Nadi, that's Akasha, Gagana, Ambara. So evacuated spatial and ethereal symbolism of the subtlest element or Akashalinga. Yes, there is Panchabhuta Stalas, one for each one of these 5 elements: solid, liquid, energy, gas and space-time. For space-time it is Natarājā temple of Chidambaram. Yes, the Akashalinga. So instantaneously, muttutāNDavar's illness was fully cured after this very first song itself related to Bhulok, Bhukailaya Giri. Right? So instantaneously his illness was fully cured, having already been, as I said, partially cured by Devi herself, our own energy, at Sirgari. Now at Chidambaram, our own nothingness cures him fully. Yes, they operate in tandem. Vaidishwaran Kovil, also in Tamil Nadu, where Shiva is the doctor and Parvati, his better half, is the surgeon. Tayyal Nayagi is the consort of Vaidishwaran. So fully cured here. Right? They operate as a team. He thus embarked upon who? muttutāNDavar. Shri muttutāNDavar embarked upon a daily yātrā, pada-yātrā, that too. Right? You heard of Advani's pada-yātrā, which eventually led to many situations and finally the ability to build a Ram temple at Ayodhya, his birthplace. So pada-yātras have been very successful over the ages, including the 90s and today too. And this was a pada-yātrā 500 years back, half a millennia back, by Shri muttutāNDavar, daily from Sirgari to Chidambaram and back, lending a keen ear, as long as he was in Chidambaram, to any of the words spoken by any devotees in his vicinity. Lo and behold, yet another masterpiece emanated each day, each one being better than the previous. On a certain day, he couldn't hear any noteworthy word. So a signal that Shravana is not required throughout life. You can go even beyond infinite perception. Infinite perception takes you to a certain level beyond which Shravana is no longer required. So on a certain day, he couldn't hear any noteworthy word spoken by the devotees. Maybe most of them were on Mauna-vrata or doing their own mental prayers or whatever. But he just couldn't hear any noteworthy word. And there was a flood too. So he couldn't see too many devotees probably. So he ended up singing nonetheless. Because it was his duty to sing. Without hearing a word, what could he sing about? Because Devi has told him, sing based on what you hear. And what he heard was silence, Mauna. So he ended up singing a brilliant composition on the significance of Mauna or silence in the spiritual path of seeking. So after the transformative experience, he no longer felt a need for lead words, making the progress from Shravana to Manana and Nididhyasana. Yes, Shravana alone is not enough. That's just the first step. You need to get into Manana or reflection and Nididhyasa or application of that. Whatever you have gained by listening and reflecting, the essence of that, the extract of that, the most significant aspects of that you apply to life. That is Nididhyasana. So Sri muttutāNDavar kept on composing and singing even after that. His life was one of miracle on a personal level, as you already heard from me, and a gift to humanity in the form of devotional songs, as you heard from VasanthiMā on the other level. muttutāNDavar was a pioneer in composing short compositions, most suitable for dance. They were called as padams. He was the pioneer in kritis as well as padams. Terivil Varano is something that most of you dancers like Kavya, etc. would have heard. In Kamas Ragam, that is. It's a classic. Even this today's song is one of the most popular dance numbers, but it's not a padam, it's a kriti. But Teruvil Varano is a padam. It's a classic and it's a delight for not only for the dancers who are dancing it has to be, but also of course the audience alike. So muttutāNDavar, Arunachala Kavi and Marimuthu Pillai, all born out of Sirgari, are celebrated. Of course, the other two, Arunachala Kavi and Marimuthu Pillai, happened 200 years after muttutāNDavar. But together they are celebrated as members of the Tamil Trinity, Tamil mover as they call them. This is different from the mover that Tirunjana Sambandar, Appar and Sundarar were. That's the movers among the Nayanmars. Then there is the mover of Tyagaraja, Shama Shastri and Muthuswami Dikshitar. That's a different mover. Now the Tamil mover are these three. That is muttutāNDavar, Arunachala Kavi and Marimuthu Pillai. In recognition of their contributions to Tamil music, this title of Tamil mover is given to them. So next let's check out a detailed word-by-word translation of today's song. Okay, so in the Pallavi, what he says is to experience, to see, because Kana is not just seeing through these physical eyes, it's an actual experience beyond the five senses, right? To experience or to see Kana, we say Anda, wondrous, amazing sight, Vedikai. And the Vedikai Kana, right? To experience the wondrous or amazing sight as the Lord dances out of his own will. āDikkoNDār, not just Adinar, āDikkoNDār. Will we not need Vendamo 1,000, that is Ayiram eyes, Kan? This refers to Shiva-tandavam, to witness which the regular 2 physical eyes are certainly not enough to take in the amazing sight of this dance, and one may indeed need 1,000, which is of course the inner eye of perception or enhancing your perceptivity. Arunachala Kavi says, the other of the 3 in the Tamil movers, amongst the Tamil movers, the other one, Arunachala Kavi, even though most of his songs were about Rama, he says that one needs 1,00,000 eyes, that is 100,000 eyes, not 1,000, to appreciate the beauty of Sita. So he's gone 100 times what muttutāNDavar sang about natarājā to describe Sita, who's nothing but a symbolism of our own mind. To observe our mind, to meditate, is what means to appreciate the beauty of Sita. To get rid of all our thoughts by just witnessing and letting them go, rather than suppressing them. And observing our mind is what the darshan of Sita really means. For that we need 1,00,000 eyes or 100,000 eyes, 100 times the perceptivity that we need, than to watch the dance of our own nothingness, according to Arunachala Kavi, the other of the Tamil movers. So of course poets use hyperbole. We say Kavidaikki poyyazhugu. That means lie is the beauty of a poem. So poets use hyperbole, exaggeration, to get the uniqueness or enormity of whatever they are trying to convey, whatever they are trying to describe. They want to use the exaggeration for that. And sometimes it might verbatim look like a lie, but the purpose is achieved nonetheless. So he is dancing delightfully. Our own nothingness is dancing delightfully. Don't we need such an enormous perceptivity which 1,000 inner eyes only can give to witness such a spectacle? Will we not need 1,000 eyes to see the wonder of the nothingness itself dancing, the dark matter, the black hole dancing? That's the Pallavi. In the Anupallavi, VasanthiMā sang, according to what, of course, muttutāNDavar has written and later was compiled, thanks to Annamalai University's funding. In the Anupallavi, muttutāNDavar goes on to say, in what you just heard of VasanthiMā, the reliable number, nambikkai we say for belief, right? So the reliable or number, golden, Thiru Sem Pon. Pon means gold, Sem is reddish, and Thiru means holy. Holy and reddish gold. So the reliable, golden, molten gold, or tapta kanchana we say, right? Thiruchampon is molten gold or tapta kanchana. So the golden complexioned dancer, that's why he's mostly made out of brass, though of course you see a silver there. So molten gold or tapta kanchana, complexioned dancer, golden colored dancer, Ambala is the one who dances in Chidambaram, Chit-ambaram or chit-ambaram. Thiru holy, chit consciousness, ambaram space, the holy space of our own consciousness, our own nothingness dances. Is our own nothingness that resides, Uraibavar, in Pangil we say, so resides in Uraibavar Pangil, those that seek, Nadi, we say Nadi Narambuno, those that seek, or those that seek, the seekers, we sadhaks are called Nadi. Those that seek it through invocations, to the power, no prayers, The Sanatana Dharma culture has no prayers. It's an imported concept from the West about praying, whether it is seeking something or thanksgiving. We never pray, we invoke, because all that there is within us. We just have to invoke, wake up to it, awaken to it. That's the real seeking inwards. The real yātrā is the inner yātrā. So uraibavar, pangil, nadi, tudipavar, all that I have said, right? What it means is that the reliable golden complexion dancer is our own nothingness that resides in those that seek it through invocations. So that's the Pallavi and Anupallavi. What happens to the charanas? VasanthiMā sang only one charana, like most Carnatic singers also sing only one charana. In fact, I myself have never heard any Carnatic singer sing all the three charanas. But there are three charanas in this song, as in many of muttutāNDavar songs. So in these three charanas, I will talk to you about all three, even though VasanthiMā sang only one, like other singers. So in the charanas, as a summary, let me first say, Sri muttutāNDavar describes the masculine force as opposed to the feminine force of the Agnya Chakra, the masculine force of the Sahasrara Chakra, right? In fact, there's a feminine force of the Agnya Chakra is Parvati, the feminine force of the Vishuddhi Chakra is Saraswati, the feminine force of the Anahata Chakra, the heart, is Lakshmi. And then there's again masculine force at the bottom of Ganesha at the Mooladhara, Muruga at the Swadhisthana, and Dharmashastra, Manikanta, Swamiyeshwara Ramayappa at the Manipuraka. So the three masculine followed by the three feminine, and then the ultimate nothingness into which all of them merge, right? So this masculine, in the charanas, Sri muttutāNDavar describes the masculine force and beauty, right? Aanmayum, Valimayum, masculine force, Aanmayum, Valimayum, and beauty, handsomeness of Shiva-thandavam. See, Thandavam as opposed to feminine dance. This is a masculine dance, Thandavam. So, in the charanas, of course, we are not talking of the man and woman thing here. Masculinity and femininity are in each and every one of us, the two halves of each one of us. It's different types of energies that we have need for both of them at different in different activities in different proportions. Okay, so in the charanas, what Sri muttutāNDavar is doing as a summary for all the three charanas, I'm saying, he describes the masculine force or Aanmayum and beauty, Valimayum of the Shiva-thandavam, of the dance of our own nothingness, and the impact or effect it has on all of us human beings and the divinity as well, that is our Rajasic Gunas as well. So he supports, that is our own nothingness is referred to as he there, as natarājā. Our own nothingness through his dance supports those who invoke him. How to invoke him? Through ourselves becoming the dance, or through meditation in which we seek the dance as a scientist, as a researcher, right? When we seek the dance, we seek the dancer. When we seek the dancer, we seek the dance, because they are one and the same. So the impact or effect it has on all of us humans and our qualities, be it the Rajasic, Tamasic or the Sattvic qualities. And our own nothingness supports those who invoke it through the Sahasrara Chakra. So our own nothingness is the Lord of the sacred golden hall, that is Chit-ambaram, has in its Natarājā temple a very famous golden hall, and that is where this dance happens. So it's basically in the space of our consciousness, Chidambaram, right? So the gold-skinned dancer, always reliable, because it's our own nothingness, right, is the Lord who resides in those that seek him through invocations. So that's the summary of all the three charanas. Let me go to them one by one now. In the first charana, as our own nothingness dances in tannile, that means in itself, as our own nothingness dances in itself, tannile, in the golden, or what we say kanaka sabai, that is hall, golden hall, in chit-ambaram, in our own space of consciousness. What happens when this dance takes place of our own nothingness? 5 or 5 ankle bells, anklets, as you say, right? The 5 ankle bells that adorn his lotus-like feet. That is, lotus-like, we say pankaya. Pankaja we say in Sanskrit, right? That which is born out of panka, that is the dirt. Here we talk about pankaya. So, lotus-like feet move, order. So, tannile kanaka sabai 5 pankaya order. Right? So, as our own nothingness dances in the golden hall of our own space of consciousness, the 5 ankle bells or anklets that adorn its lotus-like feet also move in synchrony, in resonance. The string of bells, what we call as sadangai, that also decorate his feet, you can see, which are also tied at different locations. The sadangai, the bells that are there in geje, the string of bells. So we say Salangai Puja, like Geje Puja in Kannada, Salangai Puja we say in Tamil, for the inauguration of a Bharatanatyam training into a serious level before they can perform eventually the Arangetram or the stage debut, right? So the string of bells that also decorate his feet move and produce a tinkling sound, very different from that sound of the damru, which is a creative sound. This is a tinkling sound, which is called by our composer muttutāNDavar, Sri muttutāNDavar, as kinkini, the tinkling sound. The skin, that is tol of the tiger, right? Puli tol, that he tore, uritta, puli tol uritta, the skin of the tiger that he tore. Who tore? Our own nothingness. And wore, udutta, is also swaying, assigned. So as he dances, the tiger skin that he wears around his waist, it's also dancing. Some say the elephant skin and the tiger skin is used for him to sit in meditation as the Adi Yogi in meditation, right? So the Pulitol, Uritta, Udutta, wear, tore and wore. Rhyming in English too. Uritta, Uditta, tore and wore. Is also swaying, assigned and dancing hard along with our own nothingness. As also are the deer, in Tamil, man, and the battle axe, maru, the battle axe. So the deer is also dancing. The battle axe is also dancing. Manumada, marumada, that he holds. Endiya, we say Endiya, in his soft red sen hands, sen kayil, soft and red hands, he is holding an axe, the battle axe, right? Maru is in, where is it? Maru Endiya, sen kayil, as he dances, that is as our own nothingness dances, the red-eyed demon dwarf Our ego, I told you, is the last enemy. The last thing that you need to subjugate without suppressing, but transforming and dissolving, right? So as our own nothingness dances, the red-eyed Sempor Kalarkan demon dwarf, what's his name? Muyalagan, moves along Ada. So as he dances, there's no choice but his dance platform, Muyalagan, that is our own ego, has to but move along as well in tandem. And river Ganga, what we call as Gangai in Tamil. The crescent moon, we say Ilam Pirai, that means Mundram Pirai. The third phase of the moon is the shape of the crescent moon on the head of Shiva. You can see, probably it's covered with turmeric and kumkum over here, but you can see in the one behind me by zooming in. So the river Ganga, the crescent moon representing our own mind, of course. River Ganga representing our water element, our purity again, the sattvic gunas. And our matted locks, what we call as Sen Sadai. Sadai or Sadai Muni is matted locks, right? Chata-jutadari as we call him. His matted locks, in Tamil we say Sen Sadai, dance. They also dance Ada along with our own nothingness. So when our own nothingness appears on earth in a personified form as Shiva, Natarājā, Bhairava, whoever, to subdue the false identity or ego of who? We, the intellectuals, learned men. Who else has so much ego? We, the learned men. To subdue the ego of the learned men, even in the space of consciousness. We may be seekers, sadhaks pursuing knowledge, wisdom, the ultimate wisdom, but still we have our arrogance, our ego, our false identities. All that needs to be crushed under the left foot of our own nothingness to raise the right foot, defying gravity and electromagnetism and the nuclear forces and all forces of the universe, force fields of the universe. So they attack him with a snake next. The learned men attack him with mysticism. The learned men, that is our own intelligence, what it does, it will attack our own nothingness with what? With our own mysticism. The ability to see things as they are. Then what our own nothingness will do? Our own nothingness subdues the mysticism also. That is, the infinite perception was useful in gaining to a certain level of achievement in the spiritual path. But then, as I told, Shravana has to give way to Manana and Nitidhyasana. It cannot be Shravana forever. Infinite perception forever. It takes you a very, very long way. Almost till the goal of Mukti, Moksha, Nirvana. But not right there. So there, our own nothingness has to subdue even the mysticism and use it as a garland. That's what you see in the symbolism of Natarājā, Shiva having the Vasuki snake around his neck. Then they send a tiger. Vyagrapada, we heard, is what the tiger got converted to, apart from his skin becoming a clothing, right? So our own nothingness will kill that tiger. That courage, bravery, valor, etc. that we have for worldly things, that also is needed only up to a certain level in our spiritual evolution. That also has to be given up eventually. So that becomes worn as a garment. Means it still belongs to us, but it's not us. It's our valor, our courage. We wear it as a clothing, but not become I or me. That is the distance. Involvement without entanglement. So kills the tiger with the nails of our own everythingness. Skins it and uses the skin as its own garment. Our own nothingness. Does it need garments? Just for show. During the dance, there's nothing inside, but creating that atmosphere of dance through that clothing, through that wardrobe. So then, what does our intellect do? It throws a battle axe at our nothingness. See, it's still not giving up. The intellect is sharp. It itself is like an axe, and it throws itself at our own nothingness. What does our own nothingness do? Grabs the intellect as sharp as a battle axe, wields it as its weapon. So our intellect can become the weapon of our own nothingness. Finally, what they do? Finally, they conjure up an evil dwarf. That's the last resort of our intellect. In its so-called inventiveness, innovativeness, it conjures up an evil dwarf. The intellect conjures up an evil dwarf, Muyalagam. Muyalagan, whom our own nothingness obviously subdues by putting his left feet, and dances the tandavam on his back. On whose back? On the back of the ego, our false identity. This is the fall guy. We always blame the ego, but it's nothing but our own making, and we need to dance over it, to use it as and when only it's necessary, and again put him down below our left foot, the left foot of our own nothingness. So the 5 anklets are shaking, and the string of bells, Sadangai, makes a tinkling sound, as I said. The tiger hides, stripped and worn around his waist. Whose waist? The waist of our own nothingness. The portion of our nothingness which separates the top from the bottom. The sensory from the actuating. That joint. Right? So worn around the waist of our own nothingness. And that is also dancing. The tiger skin, next the deer and the axe, borne in the hands, they are also dancing. We saw what they are. It's the intellect, sharp intellect. And the deer representing the fickle mind, our emotions. So the emotional mind and the brilliant, sharp intellect are both born in the hands, and they are also dancing in synchrony with our own nothingness. The demon Muyalagan, our own ego, is also dancing at our own nothingness, golden feet. In fact, foot, the left foot. The right foot is raised. The maiden Ganga and the crescent moon, our own water element and our own mind. On the locks of the hair are also dancing when our own nothingness dances in the golden hall of the space of our own consciousness. Prajna, Ambaram, Chit. As he dances, our own nothingness in the golden hall of the space of consciousness, the ankle bells that adorn the lotus-like feet of our own nothingness Those anklet bells also dance in synchrony, in symphony, in resonance. The string of bells on his feet, Gejje, Salangai, dance producing a tinkling sound. Whether I say his or its means one and the same, our own nothingness. Personified, we say his. Impersonal, we say its. Even though there's a lack of words, we don't find words for it because it's not even a inanimate things to say it's his or her. Beyond all that, our own everythingness. So its feet dance, producing a tinkling sound, the tiger skin that our own nothingness tore and wore, sways and dances. The fickle mind and emotions in the form of deer and the sharp intellect in the form of our battle axe that our own nothingness holds in its reddened hands dance as well. The deer and the axe. The red-eyed dwarf Muyalagan, our own ego, dances. The Ganga on the head of our own nothingness dances, representing the purity, the sattvic gunas, and the water element, which is the maximum in our body. And his or its matted locks dance too. That is involvement without entanglement. Looks entangled. That is Jata-jutadari, Sadai Mudi. But in reality, it is not. It is involvement, not entanglement. May look like entanglement to others. That was the first charanam. In the second charanam, we say, or muttutāNDavar says, and VasanthiMā sang, as our own nothingness dances Tannile in the golden or Kanaka dance hall, Sabai in Chidambaram. Again, the opening is very similar to the previous one. But then it changes. Next line. The gem-studded Ara means metal. Navamani. Ara Navamani. So metal along with 9 gems, 9 gemstones associated with the 9 grahas, right? So metal with 9 different gems. The gem-studded necklaces or maligai. Malaigal. We say Malaigal in Tamil. Right? They also dance. Aada. Malaigal aada. And the moving Adum Pambu or Aravum. Adum Pambu. Adum Aravum. The moving snake. What is it? Our own mysticism that adorns our own nothingness's neck, which separates the intellectual apparatus or the control system from the rest of the body, which is basically your actuating system. The control system along with the sensory inputs. The face has the most number of nerve endings as well. So the touch is also predominant there, apart from the reproductive organs. But you see that the skin is the largest organ throughout the body, but we go beyond that. The snake that adorns his neck, the mysticism that adorns his neck, with his hood spread out. Adum Pambu, Padam Eduthu. Padam is not just a photography or photo camera. No. Padam is also the hood. Fun, as we say in multi-fun. Right? So that adorns his neck, dances with his hood spread out. Padam Eduthu. And the cassia fistula or Kondrai flowers, Kondrai malar, cassia fistula flowers that he wears, Anind, we say, no? Ani, on his head. On whose head? Our own nothingness's head. Seer. In Hindi we say sir. Here we say seer, head. Sways. People say there's no connection between Hindi and Tamil. Well, you see a lot of it. especially in Sangam Tamil, which is the original Tamil from which today's spoken or colloquial Tamil has emerged. Where it looks very different, sounds very different. But you see, head, seer, sways, āda, in time. Because that's the rhythm, right? It has to happen in Kala. The chariot or Ther from Chidambaram also moves, Therāda, in resonance to the dancing of our own nothingness. Even the priests, Vediyar, those who sing the Vedas are Vediyars. So even the priests, Vediyar, who represent our own sattvic gunas, of course, and the 3000 Dikshitars, that is the 3000 Dikshitars, 3000 Pergalum, representing our own body, mind and intellect. That's why the three, each is so powerful that we say 1000, 2000, 3000, 3000. 3000 Pergalum is our body, mind, intellect toolkit. Of Chidambaram, Tillai, perform the Perani. Right? What's the Perani? It's a type of dance where you just stand with the Anjali Mudra and then shake your body in such a way that it appears like a dance, but essentially you're offering an invocation through your self-surrender, which is what Namaste or Namaskar is all about. I bow to the divine in you. So they perform this particular dance called Perani. As they stand, Nindru, and the dark, fearsome and purposeful Karani, who is the purpose, the cause behind all causes, dark and fearsome, Kali. That's the ultimate, the crescendo as I called it earlier. The dark, fearsome and purposeful Karani, Kali, stands, Nindru, and dances, Āda. Nindra Āda. Karani Kali, Nindra Āda. Where? In front of, Edirthu. Reflections of each other, Mahākala and Mahākali. Edirthu Nindra Āda, in front of our own nothingness, is its own energy. Perani Nityam, or Nrityam, Perani Natyam as we call it, is one of the facets of Andhra Natyam. So it goes beyond regions. Today we call all these north, south, east, west divides. The Dravida movement has unfortunately exaggerated the differences which are so beautiful in diversity, but there is an underlying unity that can never ever be broken. For 1000 years, so many different invaders tried it, but they couldn't do what they did to Egypt, what they did to Iran, Iraq, and so many other old empires of Greece, the Romans. They were all wiped out in a matter of few decades. But Sanatana Dharma, nothing can be done. Our unity is in our diversity. We can never ever be broken, even by the modern day politicians. But yes, we have to keep a watch out and tackle these forces as we have done for thousands of years. 1,000 years actually. So the plentiful 9-stone Navaratnam necklaces are also dancing with our own nothingness. The snake around the neck of our own everythingness is spreading its hood and dancing. Padameduthu. The resplendent flower or Kondrai garland hanging down is also dancing. The temple chariot is dancing. Kali is also dancing. The 3000 priests of Chidambaram invoke and dance. Thus, our own nothingness dances at the golden hall of our conscious space. And as it dances in the golden hall of our conscious space, the necklaces of 9 gems representing all the grahas, our consumers, the planets, also dance. You see that beautiful dance of the orbital mechanics that I'm going to teach the Gaganauts, who are called as astronauts in the US and called as cosmonauts in Russia, the first set of our own ability to carry in Gaganyaan, the Gaganauts, those 4 selected Gaganauts are going to be trained by me in orbital mechanics. And there you're talking of this orbital mechanics also as a dance of the planets around the sun. And then the entire solar system moves within our Milky Way galaxy, and the Milky Way galaxy moves within the universe. It's amazing how this dance takes place at the cosmic level, at the large length scales, as well as the small length scales at the atomic level, how the electrons dance around the nucleus consisting of the protons and the neutrons. Amazing. All represented by one single symbolism, so comprehensive and holistic, nothing to beat it in the entire world. So, the snake that adorns its neck dances with its hood spread, the kondrai flowers dance, the chariot dances, which is our mode of transportation of our own nothingness from one form to another form. That also dances, the chariot, the vehicle. The Vedic priests and the 3,000 people of our own space of consciousness dance the Perini with the Anjali Mudra, and they offer prayers, and the purposeful energy of our own nothingness, the dark energy of dark matter, that the dark matter and black holes are eventually going to dissipate into at the time of Pralaya, when the entire universe vanishes and gets back in shape. So the purposeful Kali also dances in front of our own nothingness to create that symphony, that ballet, that tango. And finally, in the last, third charanam, the composer, Sri muttutāNDavar, takes us back into our own spinal cord, the Sushumna Nadi. Inside the backbone is the spinal cord. Inside the spinal cord is the subtle, not physical, subtle. You can't cut it open anatomically and discover the Sushumna Nadi, or for that matter, the Ida and the Pingala Nadis as well, the masculine and feminine, left and right. But in the last charanam of his song, which unfortunately no Carnatic singers sing today, Sri muttutāNDavar takes us back into our own back, into our own spinal cord, containing the Sushumna Nadi and the 108 chakras. But we focus on the 7 major ones: Mūladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, Ajna, and the Sahasrara, housing various deities: Mūladhara Ganesha, Swadhisthana Muruga, Manipura Manikanta, Dharmashasta, Swami Sharanayappa, Anahata Lakshmi Narayana, Vishuddhi Saraswati Brahma, Ajna Durga Kalika Parameshwari Parvati, and the Sahasrara, our own nothingness, Shiva, the emperor of dance, Natarājā. Yes, in the third and last charana, muttutāNDavar says, as our own nothingness dances in our Sahasrara chakra, represented by the golden hall of our conscious space, dancing Lord of categories, Nritta Ganapati, and that which is brought up by the Kritikas, Kartikeya, Velar in the Swadhisthana dance order, and Indra dances, our own Rajasic Gunas, the leader of it all, Indra, operating through the sense organs, Indriyas, dances too, along with Udan, whom Brahma, Ayan. Ayan is a word for Brahma at the Vishuddhi. And Vishnu at the Anahata, our own everythingness, our own creativity, Ayan, and our own everythingness, Vishnu, referred to as Mal or Perumal, Tirumal. In this stanza, muttutāNDavar just says Mal, Ayan and Mal. The sages or Munivar dance with Udan, Munivar Udan, the countless or Muppattu Mukkoti, 33 crores, the population at that time of India. So everyone is considered to be divinity, forms of divinity. Or 33 crore species, you can think of different forms of plant and animal life, including human. The countless in general. Muppattu Mukkoti, 33 crore gods, Devar, Muppattu Mukkoti Devar. And Patanjali, the path of surrender, of the Raja Yoga, right royal path of oneness, who lives Mevum in Chidambaram, Meipati, the only true place. Chidambaram is referred to as Meipati. Mei means Unmei, truth. The Lord of Truth lives there, and so that's the only true place. And Vyagrapada, of course, the sage with the feet of a tiger, leopard that I referred to earlier. Dance along. One to bring in the oneness or Yoga Sutras, the other to bring in the garland of flowers of forest trees, which are untouched by even the buzzing and singing honeybees. And of course, Nandikeshwara, the very embodiment of patient attention, undivided attention. The real Shravana emblem is not even muttutāNDavar but Nandikeshwara, Basaveshwara, the bull, used in Jallikattu too. And as these individuals dance, indivisible individuals dance, but a part and parcel of our own nothingness, so does the peerless and incomparable Oppatrillada, Oppara, you say, peerless, incomparable, nobody else like her, Mother, Ammai, Shivagami, Shivakami, one who is desired by our own nothingness or one who desires our own nothingness. Both are referred to as Shivakami. In Tamil, it's pronounced as Shivagami, usually. So, Sivakami, they say. But what is it? It is that energy which desires our own nothingness, and it is that energy which our own nothingness desires. That Mother, Ammai, who is peerless and incomparable, Oppatra, dance in unison, Kudave, as Shiva dances the Tandavam, our own nothingness dances this cosmic dance. The peak of our own celebration, Parvati, dances the feminine equivalent called Lasyam, Tandavam Lasyam. Yes, the Lasyam on the left side, the Ida, and the Pingala, the masculine side, Tandavam, that is the Ardhanarishvara Tattvam. Lasyam and Tandavam happening in synchrony, simultaneously in resonance. What a symphony! The masculine and feminine principles together give rise to Thala or Thalam or the rhythm, and which is masculine, and the Ragam or the melody, which together make the song so beautiful. Of course, then the Guru or Sahityam comes in as well, as I have already described in a previous episode. To watch all of this, we will certainly need at least 1,000 eyes, if not many thousands. It's just to refer to an infinite level of perception. Ganapati and Murugan are dancing at the Mūladhara and Swadhisthana respectively. Brahma or Ayan at the Vishuddhi and Vishnu or Mal at our own everythingness at our heart, our own creativity at our throat, through which communication emanates in the form of Saraswati, and our own everythingness at our heart, through which Lakshmi emanates as our prosperity. And Indran, chief of the staff in the celestial world, representing none other than our own Rajasic Gunas, that dances too. Because the Rajasic Gunas are the ones which the passion that has to be a part of the dance, the passionate dance that Tandavam or Lasyam are. With innumerable celestials, innumerable Rajasic Gunas, the sages also dance with their Sattvic Gunas. The truly devoted Patanjali Maharishi of the Yoga Sutra fame, Raja Yoga, also dances. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. The Ashtanga Yoga dances. The sage Vyagrapada with the tiger-footed one, and the sacred bull Nandi also dance, the embodiment of our own patience, the embodiment of our own ability to acquire whatever needs to be acquired, Vyagrapada. Our incomparably resplendent energy, which desires our own nothingness, Devi Shivakami or Shivagami, Devi Shivakami, which is basically our own resplendent, incomparable energy, so bright that it's incomparable, peerless, which desires our own nothingness and is desired by our own nothingness, that dances together with our own nothingness. As our own nothingness dances in the golden hall of our conscious space, our own lordship over all categories and our own valor dance together too. Ganapati and Muruga I am referring to as our own lordship over all categories and our own valor. They dance too. Our sensually passionate Rajasic Gunas dance in the form of Indra, along with our own creativity in the form of Brahma and our own sustainability in the form of Vishnu. And of course, their energies of Saraswati and Lakshmi, prosperity and communication. The sages dance, which means our Sattvic Gunas dance, with many celestials, the Rajasic Gunas. The path of surrender or Patanjali also lives in the conscious space of Chit-ambaram, dances. Vyagrapada dances with his tiger feet, and Nandi with his bullishness of patience. The incomparable mother Shivagami, Parvati, dances in unison. What is it about the idea of God's dancing which fascinates us all so much? Again and again we see ourselves drawn to the compositions which describe the primordial energy of the Tandava, dance of Shiva, or the elegance and beauty of the dance of Krishna on the Kalinga. Why is it that we want our gods to dance? Unlike other religions, especially the Western ones, which see divinity as an awe-inspiring paternalistic figure who is quite removed from us mortals, we in the Sanatana Dharma enjoy a way of life, a vision of an accessible and participative divinity in us, with us, around us. So why I feel sometimes that I just need to extend my hand to touch the hand of that divinity, not like meeting the extraterrestrial ET as per the vision of Steven Spielberg, for God is not alien, not even like Michelangelo's remote God leaning down from the heaven on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. No, our own divinity seems to reach out to us as a mother reaches out to a child with vatsalya bhava, or a daughter reaches out to its parent with that kind of surrender. Familiar, comforting, very, very near and dear. These familiar and dear attributes of divinity seem to take an immense joy in their creativity, creation, and what better way to express their joy but by song and dance? Who else creates but we alone? That's why we say, Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Matru Rupena Samstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Movement is so very fundamental to our world. Mechanics, dynamics, galaxies move, suns move, planets move, the stars move, electrons move, and we also move along with it all, dancing to an intricate step which, if stopped, will end this universe. This dance ties us all together with the universe, making us whole. It is not surprising at all, therefore, that we see the dance of our divinity in all these movements. VasanthiMā's selection for today was a composition of the Tamil composer muttutāNDavar, who lived, some say, between 1525 to 1600, but others say between 1560 to 1640, whatever, the dates being uncertain. He came from a family, as I said, which played the nadaswaram but could not participate in the family's musical profession due to his sickness. Legends indicate that he was cured by divine intervention, as we already saw the details of the story. He went from Srīrgāri, his hometown, to Chidambaram daily and composed many songs in praise of the deity there, natarājā, Shiva as the eternal dancer. And he is credited with developing the three-part Pallavi, Anupallavi and Charanam system or structure of the Kritis. Only 60 or so of his compositions are known today, thanks to Tirupamburam Swaminatha Pillai, who set them to music between the years 1899 to 1961. Do we not need 1,000 eyes to see the wonder of his dance, says the poet. He describes the Lord as he who resides in all those who seek him in prayer, thus making him as accessible as can be, even for the Dvaita devotee, leave alone Advaitans like us. The poet's description of Shiva is as rhythmic. The description itself is as rhythmic as the dance he describes, giving us a vision of great wonder. We do indeed need 1,000 eyes to take it all in. I like this song in the voice of Srīrgāri Shiva Chidambaram, whose voice, like his dad Srīrgāri Govindarajan's, who happens to be the favorite singer of my dad, Papaji Master, Dr. H.V. Sampath Kumar, has the typical timbre of the Dravidian heartland. I can well imagine that muttutāNDavar had a similar voice when he sang his songs in the temples of Srīrgāri and Chidambaram as āDikkoNDār and the Vedikkaikana Kannāyiram Vendamo. Har Har Mahadev Shambho Shankar. Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya. Om Namah Shivaya. Wish you all a very, very engaging Mahā-śiva-rātri on the 11th, which is the coming Thursday. Namaskar.